The light rain made the night even colder, and Claire wrapped her arms around herself against the biting wind. Her worn clothes were not enough to keep her warm. Her feet, once accustomed to luxurious heels and soft carpets, now ached inside cheap, worn-out boots. Every step on the wet sidewalk seemed to echo the harsh reality she now faced. She stopped in front of a massive iron gate. Her eyes roamed over the grandeur of the mansion that rose beyond the high walls, illuminated by the warm lights that spilled from the windows. This place had once been her home, her refuge. Now it was just a cruel reminder of everything she had lost. With a deep sigh, Claire reached out a trembling hand and pressed the intercom button. The silence that followed seemed to last an eternity. Fear of what would come next made her heart hammer in her chest. "Who is it?" The deep voice of a security guard sounded over the intercom. She cleared her throat before answering. "Claire Thompson, I'm here because of the job posting for a maid." A tense silence filled the moment. Claire waited, her chest tight, fearing that the answer would be an immediate refusal. But then, with a metallic creak, the gates slowly began to open. She swallowed hard and stepped inside, feeling the cold stone floor beneath her feet. She walked through the impeccably manicured garden, where illuminated fountains gushed crystal-clear water and perfectly pruned shrubs created a landscape worthy of a magazine. However, Claire didn't allow herself to admire any of it. Her focus was getting this job. When she reached the main entrance, the large dark wooden door swung open, revealing a tall, hard-faced man. His gaze pierced her like a blade, and Claire felt a chill run down her spine as she recognized his face. Nathan Carter, the man who had once been her husband. The tension in the air was palpable. His gaze fixed on her, filled with surprise and something else, something Claire couldn't decipher. "Claire?" His voice was low, almost a whisper. She lifted her chin with effort, ignoring the pain of humiliation that burned inside her. "Yes," she answered firmly. "I need a job." The silence between them was absolute. Only the sound of the light rain falling on the garden filled the emptiness of that moment. Nathan blinked a few times, as if he needed to process the scene in front of him. Then his gaze narrowed, returning to its cold and calculating form. "Do you want to work here?" "As my maid." Claire held his gaze, determined not to show weakness. "Yes." Nathan's breathing became heavier, and he uncrossed his arms. For a moment, Claire thought he was going to laugh or send her away. But instead, he just narrowed his eyes and said something that made her catch her breath. "Come in." She didn't know what was in store for her, but one thing was certain. Her past was about to collide with her present in a way she could never have imagined. The air inside the mansion was warm and welcoming, contrasting with the biting cold of the night outside. But to Claire, the heat felt stifling. Her eyes swept over the spacious lobby, the luxurious furnishings, the impeccable shine of the marble floors. Nothing had changed since she had left all those years ago, but to her everything was different. Nathan closed the door behind her and crossed his arms, studying her with an unreadable gaze. He looked exactly the same, tall, imposing, with his dark hair perfectly combed and the cold expression he always used to hide his feelings. But his eyes, they were filled with something Claire couldn't quite define. "So, explain it to me." His voice was sharp. "Do you want to be a maid in my house?" Claire took a deep breath, tried to maintain her composure. "Yes, I need a job, and that's my last option." Nathan let out a short, disbelieving laugh. He walked slowly to the glass table next to the couch, picked up a glass of whiskey, and swirled the amber liquid before taking a sip. "I never thought I'd see you like this, Claire." He arched an eyebrow. "From queen of luxury to maid?" His words were like a slap in the face. Claire felt pride twist inside her, but she didn't back down. "Life takes turns, Nathan. I thought you knew that." He set his glass down on the table and walked closer. "And why should I hire you?" His eyes narrowed. "Give me one reason to believe that you really want this job and aren't just trying to get some other way." Claire clenched her fists at her sides, keeping her gaze steady on his. "Because I have no other choice." Silence fell between them. Nathan analyzed every detail of her, as if searching for some hidden lie behind her words. But all he found was weariness, exhaustion, and a determination he'd probably never seen before. He let out a long sigh. I sighed, running my hand over my chin. Do you have experience with this kind of work? Claire hesitated. Not officially. No. He let out a low laugh. But I'm a quick learner. And I'm dedicated. Nathan tilted his head thoughtfully. Then something flashed in his eyes. You know what's funny? He leaned in even closer, his voice low and full of irony. You used to say you'd never do this kind of work, that you weren't cut out to clean anything but credit cards. Claire felt the humiliation burning in her face, but she kept her chin up. I was a different person. He let out a long sigh, as if he was still undecided. Then, after a moment of silence, his expression hardened. Okay, you start tomorrow. Claire's eyes widened. What? You heard me right. Nathan picked up his whiskey again and took another sip. If you want this job, it's yours. But know that I don't go easy on anyone, Claire. And with you, it won't be any different. She felt a chill run down her spine. I accept. Nathan nodded slowly. Very well. Then welcome back, Claire. This time as my maid. She didn't know if this was a victory or a trap, but one thing was certain. Her life had just taken a turn she could never have foreseen. The silence between them was almost palpable. Claire could feel her heart pounding in her chest, but she didn't show it. She needed this job, even if it meant putting up with Nathan's arrogance. He picked up the phone without taking his eyes off her and dialed a number. Amanda, prepare a room for our new maid, he said in a casual voice, as if he hadn't just hired his ex-wife to work in his own house. Claire clenched her fists at her sides. Being treated like this hurt, but there was no alternative. Do you think you can start tomorrow morning? Nathan asked, picking up his glass of whiskey again. She straightened her shoulders. Yes. He took another sip and gave her a half-smile. Great. Your duties will be simple. Keep the house spotless. Tidy the rooms, cook. Claire blinked. Cook? Yes. My previous housekeeper retired. Nathan crossed his arms, watching her reaction. Is there a problem? Claire took a deep breath. Before, she had never had to cook anything, other than instant coffee, but she couldn't let up now. None. Nathan chuckled softly, shaking his head. Let me see. He walked to the door and opened it, indicating that the conversation was over. Amanda will show you to your room. Good night, Claire. With no other option, she turned and left. As she walked down the long hallway, she saw a middle-aged woman approaching. You must be Claire, the woman said, scrutinizing her from head to toe. I'm Amanda, the head of the staff team. Claire just nodded, trying to ignore the woman's judgmental gaze. I'll show you to your room. Come with me. She followed Amanda through the halls of the mansion. Every step brought back painful memories. This had been her home before. Now, it was just a place where she would have to prove herself. Amanda stopped in front of a door and opened it. This will be your room. The room was small, but clean and comfortable. Nothing compared to the luxury she had once lived in, but Claire had no room for regrets. Breakfast is served at 6. We expect you to be ready for work on time. Claire nodded. Understood. Amanda left without another word. Claire closed the door and took a deep breath. She had gotten the job, but deep down, she knew that this was just the beginning of a long battle. She lay down on the bed and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. The shrill sound of the alarm clock echoed in the small room. Claire opened her eyes, feeling the weight of the new reality settle on her shoulders. The simple room, the neutral walls, and the lack of any luxury were clear reminders that her life had changed drastically. She got up quickly, put on the uniform Amanda had left her the night before, and tied her hair into a simple bun. She took a deep breath in front of the mirror. You can do it. It's just a job. At 6 o'clock sharp, she went down to the kitchen. Amanda was already there, giving instructions to the other employees. Good morning, Claire said, trying to sound confident. Amanda looked her up and down, her lips curling into a slight, cynical smile. Let's see if you can keep up, Claire. I need you to take care of Mr. Carter's breakfast. He likes scrambled eggs, toast, and black coffee, no sugar. Claire swallowed hard. Cooking had never been her strong point, but she couldn't fail on her first day. She gathered up the ingredients and tried to remember how she'd seen someone make scrambled eggs before. She turned on the stove and started cooking, doing her best not to mess up. After a few minutes, she carefully placed everything on the plate, trying to make the presentation flawless. Amanda picked up the tray and studied the food. Not bad for a newbie. She handed the tray to Claire. Now, take it to him. Mr. Carter eats breakfast in his office. Claire's heart raced. Serving Nathan personally? She hadn't expected this. But she had no choice. Carrying the tray carefully, she walked up the stairs and stopped in front of the office door. She took a deep breath and knocked twice. Come in. She opened the door to find Nathan sitting behind a solid wood desk, sorting through some papers. His gaze met hers briefly before dropping to the tray. Did you cook this? She asked, arching an eyebrow. Yes. He picked up a fork and speared a piece of scrambled eggs. He brought it to his mouth without saying anything, chewing slowly. Claire waited, anxious, unsure if that was a good sign or not. Finally, he put the fork down and took a sip of his coffee. It's not bad. Claire almost breathed a sigh of relief. Thank you. Nathan leaned back in his chair and regarded her with a puzzled look. Seeing you like this still amazes me. I could have sworn I would never set foot in this house except as its owner. Claire stood firm. Things change, Nathan. He let out a small laugh, picking up one of the papers on the table. Yes, they do. Some for the better, some not so much. She didn't answer. She just picked up the empty tray and turned to leave. Claire. She stopped and looked at him. Don't make me regret hiring you. She held her breath for a moment, then nodded and left, closing the door behind her. Her first day had just begun, but Claire already knew. Working for Nathan Carter would be a lot harder than she had imagined. The day passed in a blur of endless tasks. Claire cleaned the mansion's immaculate hallways, arranged the luxurious furniture, and helped in the kitchen. Amanda made a point of supervising her every move, as if expecting her to make a mistake. By nightfall, Claire could feel every muscle in her body throbbing. She wasn't used to this kind of work, but she wasn't going to complain. She was still here. She still had a job. She was in the kitchen, washing the last of the dinner dishes, when she heard Amanda's voice behind her. Mr. Carter wants to see you in the dining room. Claire frowned. Now? Yes, and I suggest you don't keep him waiting. Swallowing her surprise, Claire wiped her hands on her apron and walked down the long hallway to the dining room. When she entered, she found Nathan sitting at the table, an open bottle of wine next to his plate. He looked up as she approached. Sit down, she said, indicating the chair across from him. She hesitated. I thought you were done for the day. I'm just asking to have dinner with me. He twirled his wine glass between his fingers. Or are you afraid to share a table with me now, too? Claire gritted her teeth but sat down. Nathan poured them both wine and raised his glass. A toast to your first day as my maid. Claire took the glass, but didn't toast. She just took a small sip, keeping her gaze steady on his. Why are you doing this? Nathan leaned back in his chair, watching her with interest. Because I'm curious. About what? About how Claire Thompson, the woman who said she'd never need anyone, ended up here. The question hit her hard. Claire set her glass down on the table and took a deep breath. I've lost everything, Nathan. I thought you knew that by now. He studied every detail of her expression. And no one tried to help you? No friend, no acquaintance, no family member? She let out a bitter laugh. You'd be surprised how quickly people disappear when you have nothing left to offer. For a moment, Nathan didn't answer. He just held the glass between his fingers, thoughtful. Has money always been the most important thing to you, Claire? She felt a lump form in her throat. I thought so, but I was wrong. Nathan nodded slowly, as if absorbing her words. Maybe it was. Silence settled between them. It was no longer a silence filled with hostility, but something different. Something undefined. For a moment, Claire allowed herself to look at him as she had before, as the man who had once been hers. But she quickly pushed the thought away. Nathan cleared his throat and stood up. Well, I think I've distracted you enough. Tomorrow will be another long day. Claire stood up, too, feeling something inside her that she couldn't name. Yes, thank you for dinner. Nathan watched her for a moment before saying, Good night, Claire. She turned and left the room, feeling more confused than ever. The next morning, Claire was in the kitchen, organizing the ingredients for Nathan's breakfast, when she heard the sound of tires in the driveway of the mansion. Out of the corner of her eye, she noticed Amanda peering out the window, an apprehensive look on her face. "What's wrong?" Claire asked as she cracked eggs into the pan. Amanda snorted. "Olivia Carter just got here." The name made Claire's heart race. Olivia, Nathan's daughter. Before she could react, the kitchen door burst open and a woman walked in, dressed impeccably in a designer trench coat and sunglasses. Her blonde hair was perfectly coiffed, and her posture radiated arrogance. Olivia stopped in the doorway, took off her glasses, and narrowed her eyes at Claire. "This is a joke, right?" Claire put down her spatula and took a deep breath. "Hello, Olivia." Nathan's daughter crossed her arms in disbelief. "This can't be real. You're in my house, wearing that ridiculous uniform." She laughed, the sound cold and humorless. "What's going on here?" Before Claire could answer, Amanda intervened. "Your father hired Claire to work here." Olivia's face twisted in disbelief. "My father did what?" "Exactly what you heard." The silence that followed was almost suffocating. Olivia turned to Claire, her eyes shining with a mixture of contempt and amusement. "So, that's it? The mighty Claire Thompson is now scrubbing toilets and serving coffee?" Claire refused to be fazed. "I have a proper job, Olivia." Nathan's daughter let out a sarcastic laugh. "That's not a job, Claire. That's humiliation." Claire held her gaze. "If that's how you see it, it's not my problem." Before Olivia could retort, Nathan's voice echoed down the hallway. "Olivia." She turned, and for the first time Claire saw the girl hesitate. Nathan walked into the kitchen, his gaze flickering between Claire and his daughter. He didn't seem surprised by Olivia's reaction. "I was just about to come up to talk to you," he said, picking up a cup of coffee. "Dad, this has to be a joke. Did you really hire her?" Nathan took a sip of his coffee and replied calmly, "Yes. And I expect you to respect my decision." Olivia blinked in disbelief. "Respect? You brought this woman back into our home as a servant. How do you think that makes me feel?" Nathan sighed, looking tired. "It's not about you, Olivia." Young Carter frowned. "Of course it is. I went away for a few weeks, and when I come back, I find this woman working here." As if nothing had happened, Nathan set his cup down on the counter. "Claire works here now, and that's not going to change." Claire watched the scene in silence. She knew Olivia would never accept her there, but she hadn't expected so much resistance so soon. Nathan's daughter narrowed her eyes and crossed her arms. "We'll see." With that, she turned and left the kitchen, her heels clicking on the marble floor. Amanda let out a long sigh. This isn't going to be good at all. Claire knew Amanda was right. Olivia wouldn't accept her presence without a fight, and Claire needed to be prepared for that. The next few days were a true test of Claire's patience. Olivia made sure to remind her at every turn that she didn't belong in that house. Little acidic comments here and there, looks full of contempt, and whenever possible, unnecessary orders just to reaffirm her position of power. But Claire didn't give the pleasure of reacting. She just continued with her work, ignoring the provocations. Until one night, everything changed. It was already past 10 o'clock when Claire finished organizing the kitchen and was getting ready to go up to her room. But as she walked down the hallway, she noticed Olivia in the distance, standing at the door to Nathan's office. The girl looked around, as if checking if she was alone, and then slipped into the room. Claire frowned. Something about that scene seemed strange. Still, she continued on her way to her room, trying to push the thought away. But the next day, early in the morning, she was woken up by loud knocks on the door. "Get up now!" Amanda's voice sounded harsh. Startled, Claire opened the door and found Amanda and Nathan standing there, both with serious expressions. "What's going on?" she asked, trying to understand. Nathan was holding a small silver key between his fingers. "This key was found inside your drawer, Claire. It's the key to the safe in my office." The floor seemed to disappear beneath her feet. "What?" Her eyes widened. "That doesn't make sense." "I never. My safe was broken into this morning," Nathan interrupted, his voice icy. "And the key was in your room." Claire felt her breath quicken. "I didn't do it." Her voice was shaky. Before Nathan could respond, Olivia appeared beside him, her expression falsely innocent. "Dad, I warned you. I knew this was going to happen from the beginning. Some people just don't change." Claire stared at Olivia, and in that instant, everything made sense. She had set her up. You framed me. Claire snapped, her voice thick with indignation. Olivia's eyebrows rose. Do you really expect anyone to believe that? Nathan narrowed his eyes. Claire, tell me the truth. Did you take anything from the safe? The pain in her chest was unbearable. The fact that Nathan was even considering the possibility said it all. She swallowed her anger, feeling tears threaten to spill over. No, Nathan. I would never steal anything from you. He continued to watch her, his eyes searching for something she didn't know what it was. After a long silence, he sighed. I need to look into this further. Until then, you're suspended from work. Claire felt her stomach churn. Nathan, please. That's enough, Claire. He turned and left. Olivia crossed her arms, a satisfied smile on her face. I warned you. You don't belong here. Claire felt a wave of fury rise up inside her, but she refused to explode. She might have been humiliated, but one thing was certain. She wasn't going to let Olivia win so easily. Claire stood in the middle of the room, feeling her heart pounding. Humiliation burned inside her, but it wasn't just that. It was the injustice. She knew Olivia had set it all up, but proving it would be a challenge. She took a deep breath and left the room. She wasn't going to lock herself in there like she was guilty. She needed to think, she needed to act. She went downstairs and found Amanda in the kitchen, arms crossed, staring at her with an unreadable expression. Do you think I did this? Claire asked, keeping her voice steady. Amanda sighed. I don't know what to think, Claire, but I know Olivia always gets what she wants. Claire clenched her fists. Then I need to prove that I'm telling the truth. Before she could say anything else, Nathan's voice echoed. Down the hallway. Amanda, I need to talk to you. Amanda gave Claire a warning look before leaving the kitchen. Claire took the opportunity and slipped down the hallway toward Nathan's office. If Olivia had set her up, she must have left some clue behind. As she entered the office, her gaze quickly scanned the room. The safe was ajar, as if it had been tampered with in a hurry. But it was the security camera in the upper corner of the room that caught her attention. She held her breath. There were cameras there. Couldn't Nathan just check the footage before accusing her? Before she could think better of it, the office door opened and Nathan walked in. He stopped when he saw her there. Claire, what are you doing here? She turned to him, resolute. You have cameras in the office. Why don't you check the footage before you accuse me? Nathan blinked in surprise. The office cameras were turned off last night. Claire felt her stomach sink. What? Nathan frowned. Yes. And that's weird, because no one should have access to them but me. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Nathan turned back to his computer and began typing something. Claire tensed as he scrolled through the security files. The logs show that someone accessed the settings in the early hours of the morning and disabled the office camera at exactly 2:47 a.m. Claire gritted her teeth. That proves it was set up, Nathan. He took a deep breath and rubbed his face. That proves someone tried to hide something, but it still doesn't say who it was. Before Claire could answer, Olivia walked into the office with a satisfied smile. What's going on here? Nathan stared at her for a moment before asking, Where were you at 2:47 in the morning? Olivia's expression faltered for a second. What? Answer me, Olivia. Were you awake? She looked from Claire to Nathan, clearly uncomfortable. I want to get a drink of water. Nathan continued to watch her. And you turned off the camera in my office while you were at it? Olivia opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Claire felt the first glimmer of hope spark inside her. Nathan stepped forward, crossing his arms. Did you set Claire up, Olivia? Olivia's eyes widened. Dad, how can you accuse me of this? Nathan shook his head. You've done similar things before. And now, when Claire suggests I look at the cameras, I find out they were disabled the night of the robbery. Olivia swallowed hard. That doesn't mean I did it. Nathan sighed and looked at Claire. I can't prove anything right now, but something doesn't feel right. Claire kept her gaze steady. I'm not giving up until I clear my name. Olivia narrowed her eyes at her. But this time, Claire saw something different there. Fear. And that meant Olivia knew she was about to be exposed. Nathan was silent for a few seconds, watching Olivia with a look Claire couldn't quite read. He took a deep breath, running a hand over his face as if trying to gather his thoughts. Olivia, his voice was firmer than before. If there's something you need to tell me, now's the time. Nathan's daughter crossed her arms, looking away. I already told you it wasn't me. But her voice was hesitant, and Claire could tell she was starting to shake. Nathan, however, wasn't satisfied with that answer. He walked slowly over to the office desk and picked up a small remote control. With the press of a button, an electronic sound filled the room. "What's that?" Olivia asked, alarmed. Nathan smirked, but without humor. "I had a backup camera, Olivia. It wasn't disabled." Olivia's face drained of color. Claire leaned forward slightly, her heart racing. Nathan pressed another button, and the video began to play. On the screen, Olivia was seen entering the office the night before. She walked cautiously to her father's desk and picked up a small object, the key to the safe. Then, with a determined expression, she quickly left. The silence that followed was overwhelming. Olivia was pale, her lips parted, speechless. "Dad," she began, but her voice trailed off. Nathan turned off the video and crossed his arms. "I want to hear the truth, Olivia. Now." His daughter took a deep breath, her expression wavering between despair and frustration. Then, finally, she murmured, I just wish she would go away." Claire couldn't hide her surprise. "You set me up because you wanted me to leave?" Olivia stared at her, her eyes shining with a mixture of anger and regret. "Yes." She threw her hands up. "I couldn't stand seeing you here. You were part of our lives before, and now you're back as if nothing had happened." Nathan let out a deep sigh. "Olivia, do you understand what you did? You tried to ruin someone's life on a whim." The girl's eyes filled with tears. "I was just scared, Dad. Scared that you still had feelings for her." Claire's heart skipped a beat. She looked at Nathan, who was visibly uncomfortable with those words. Nathan opened his mouth to respond, but Olivia cut him off. "And now I realize I was wrong. I went too far." She turned to Claire and, for the first time, looked genuinely remorseful. "Claire, I'm sorry. I was cruel and unfair to you." Claire was silent for a moment. She could have poured out all her anger there, remembered every humiliation she had suffered. But instead, she just sighed. "I didn't expect to hear that from you, Olivia." The girl looked away, embarrassed. "I know, but can I try to make things right?" Nathan looked at Claire, waiting for her answer. She took a deep breath. "I accept your apology, but trust can't be rebuilt overnight." Olivia nodded slowly. "I understand." Nathan relaxed his shoulders and looked at Claire. "I made a mistake too. I shouldn't have judged you so quickly." Claire met his eyes, and for a moment time seemed to stop. Something between them was still there. And Claire realized that the story wasn't over yet. Silence hung in the room for a few moments, as if everyone there was absorbing the weight of the moment. Claire looked at Olivia, who seemed more fragile than ever. The girl had tried to destroy her, but now she was there, regretting it. Nathan let out a long sigh and ran his hand through his hair, clearly exhausted. "Claire, I can't undo everything that happened, but I can right a wrong. If you still want to work here, the position is still yours." Claire blinked, surprised. "After all this?" He nodded. "Yes, but the decision is yours." She looked at Olivia, who kept her gaze downcast, and then at Nathan. For years, she thought her life had been reduced to nothing, that she would never get a second chance. But here she was getting exactly that. She took a deep breath. "I accept." Nathan smiled slightly, as if he had expected that answer. Olivia nodded too, respecting Claire's decision. In the following days, something changed inside the Carter mansion. Claire continued her work, but this time without the weight of distrust and humiliation. Olivia made efforts to redeem herself, trying to make up for the harm she had caused. But what surprised Claire the most was Nathan. He started looking for her more often, whether to ask about her day or simply to share a conversation. The cold and calculating man she knew seemed, little by little, to be opening up again. One night, after a long day of work, Claire was putting the finishing touches on dinner when Nathan appeared in the kitchen. "Do you have a minute?" She looked up surprised. "Sure." He came closer and crossed his arms, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I've been thinking a lot these past few days. About us, about everything." Claire was silent, waiting for him to continue. "When you came back, I felt angry. Not because I wanted to see you go away, but because I never accepted the way things ended between us. Her heart raced. And what do you want now? Nathan hesitated for a moment before saying, I want to know if we can start over. Not like before, but in a different way. Claire stared at him, surprised by his sincerity. And in that moment, she realized that perhaps not all was lost. I don't know what the future holds, Nathan. He smiled slightly. We can figure it out together. Claire took a deep breath, letting out a smile. For the first time in a long time, she felt like her life was finally starting over. And this time, she would do everything differently.